Hi, welcome back to the workshop. I just want to do a short video about fret wire, or more specifically bending fret wire. Now generally when you buy fret wire you have two choices. You can either have the pre-cut, pre-radius frets that you buy in sets, or you can buy the straight fret wire. Now using pre-cut frets is fine, but the problem you might come across is that if they're pre-radiused, they might be radiused to a different one than you're using. And if that's the case, it's very difficult to actually adjust that. In terms of the lengths of fret wire that you can buy, they tend to come straight. So if you buy it in a length, you need some way of putting a radius onto it. And that's where this comes in. So this is a simple fret radiusing jig that I've built. It's taken me about half an hour to make, and I think in total it's cost about £5 for the bits. So all this is a sheet of acrylic, and it's got 3 sets of bearings mounted on bolts. 2 are fixed and 1 is adjustable and slides up and down. And basically, depending on where this is positioned, adjusts the radius that you bend the frets to. These are commercially available. All the usual people, StewMac, etc. will sell you one of these. You can also buy them fairly cheaply off Amazon, eBay, etc. But even the cheap ones are probably going to cost you about £25 to £30. So that's 5 or 6 times what this cost me. In terms of difficulty of building, I think if you're anywhere near the skill level of building your own guitar, you should be able to do one of these with your eyes closed. It's just a matter of drilling a few holes and cutting a slot with a router. But you'll see all of that as we go through the build. So this build's going to be relatively straightforward. I could probably do it in real time on the video. You need very little. I'm going to start off with a piece of, I think it's about 6mm thick acrylic. You could use any kind of wood, plywood, MDF, anything like that, doesn't really matter. I'm using the acrylic because I had this piece kicking around. It's about the right size and it's going to look cooler. What you'll also need is some bearings. Now the size for these isn't massively important. These are about 20mm on the outside diameter, and they've got an 8mm central bore, and I've got 6 of those. And then 3 M8 nuts and bolts, 2 with standard nuts. I'm using nylock nuts just so that they don't move around, and 1 with a wing nut because this one's going to be adjustable. And basically all we're going to do is we're going to set out 2 pairs of bearings on the bottom and an adjustable bearing on top of them. And then what will happen is you roll the fret wire through, it'll put a radius on it. So the first thing I'm going to do in this instance, because you can't really mark very well on the acrylic, I'm just going to take some masking tape and put a layer over the top of the acrylic. So having done that, I'm just going to eyeball this of where I think they should be going. A square line across there. And I'm also going to mark a centre line onto this. It's 4 inches wide. Put a line at 2 inches. So that's the centre point for the two bottom bearings, and I'm going to set it up so at its lowest point the top bearing will actually be touching them. You'd never want it to be like that in use, but and then just roughly eyeball where I'd want the top of that to be. So the next step here is to drill the two holes for the bottom bearings and then to cut a slot for the top bearing to go in. But the first job there again will be to drill two holes at the top and bottom. So regular viewers might be wondering what's happening with the Telecaster build. I'm in the middle of the finishing process on that, so that's taken me quite a few days to get through, but the video for that will be up probably beginning of next week. If you're not a regular viewer, I'll put a link to the playlist up there somewhere so you can check that out. Right, back to the build. Okay, so I need these holes at 8mm, but I'm going to pilot them with a 4mm bit first. And just take these out to 8mm. Okay, so this is probably the hardest bit of this job, and that is to cut the slot between the two holes that we've just drilled for the upper bearing to slide in. I've set this up with a bit of tape and it's marked. I don't know if you can see it, but I've put two pencil marks on that correspond with points on the fence, so when those points meet I know I've gone far enough. The only downside to working with this material is it melts as you're cutting it with a router, which isn't brilliant, but we got there in the end. Okay, with that done, it's time to put this thing together. Start off with the bottom rollers. So I'm setting these up. Got a washer, two bearings, another small washer. It's important that your washer is smaller than this outside bit of the bearing, else it will foul it. Goes through there, and a larger washer on the back. Doesn't have to be too tight, but it's important that those rollers turn. They're fine. And same again on this one. That's good. And there we are, we're ready to go. And the way this works is simply, you set this up, when you run your fret wire through, it puts a radius on it. Like that. And that's it, simple really. Very easy jig to make, very effective as you can see. Takes a little bit of practice maybe to get used to using it. I think the key is to kind of understand roughly where you need to be in terms of top roller positioning to get the radius you want, so a little bit of trial and error required there perhaps, and there's nothing to stop you marking these positions on the jig in some way so you can set it up roughly where you need it to be for the next occasion. So happy with that. As you saw, it didn't take that long to build, but does work. Potentially not as easy to use as some of the models you can buy, but given the difference in price, a great alternative. So hopefully that's been helpful, and for me this is one of the important parts of this hobby, is kind of sharing the information and helping each other out. It's the ability to save a few pounds by making things like this that makes the hobby more accessible, and that can only be a good thing really. I'm not going to try and claim any credit for this design. I know that similar models have been commercially available since the early 80s, and there's several videos on YouTube of how to make these things. This is simply my take on that. If you do want to make one of these, I'll leave a link in the description to the bearings that I've used. I hope you found this useful. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, and I'll look forward to seeing you very soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.